Hi, I'm Janine Turner. Welcome to Northern Disclosure, where Rob Morrow and we talk about all the episodes one by one of Northern Exposure, which is available to watch, by the way, on Amazon Prime and numerous venues. So check it out. Today is one of my favorite shows ever, Spring Break. And we have the great director, Rob Thompson, with us today to talk with us about this episode. If you haven't watched it, if there's one episode to watch on Northern Exposure, I believe this is one to watch. It was so incredibly unique and fun. So welcome to the show today. And Rob Morrow, howdy. Though I'm in LA today.
That's right.
Yeah, Rob and I are doing press for Northern Exposure, a little Access Hollywood and KTLA and things of that nature. We're glad to be promoting it. So hi, Rob.
Hey, Janine, nice to see you. You look fresh and lovely.
Do I look LA?
Yeah, you look very groovy, LA. I like your outfit, your hair.
This is Viore. Viore is very LA. I think it's an LA company. So anyway.
Oh yeah.
I love this jumpsuit.
You were waxing effusive about the episode, and I agree. It's as I always say, there's probably about 10 episodes that in my book were really truly stand above the rest, and this is certainly one of them. And Rob Thompson is he was a real force on the show. He came on as a director and then eventually a producer and produced a lot of shows, for us. And always those episodes that he was behind were always distinguished by visually and tonally and emotionally, great performances. So I'm excited to hear his thoughts. And if you want, I'll just, I know the audience loves to hear the plot summary of the episode. So I'll just kind of tell you the plot summary of Spring Break, which was episode 5 of season 2. To Joel's shocked surprise, the impending ice meltdown submerges Sicily in its annual crazy spring days, including a crime wave, this year car radio thefts, and lustful cravings. Holling looking for fist fights, ending up with a surprising outside opponent. And even Joel has his first wet dream, kisses Maggie, who dreams of him, and has an Indian date. Ed finds the thief, and then there's the annual bull run, Men in the Buff, which we have plenty to talk about. And I'll just say to the audience as well, you can listen to this show wherever you get your podcasts, but if you want to see us, you can watch on YouTube on the Northern Disclosure channel. So thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for that synopsis, Rob. I can't believe they said wet dream. I mean, it's like so funny that they would put that in the description. But it was all sexual. Everyone had their sexual energy, and it plays throughout the entire show. I think this show is so brilliant. And gosh, who was it written by? David Assel?
David Assel, who wrote 6 episodes over the course of the series.
Excellent. It is just refreshing, brilliant. Once again, the music, you have classical music in the background or jazz during a boxing fight or whatever. The music, and we had Martin Brucey on last week, continues to be phenomenal. But I was really impressed with Rob Thompson. We loved him. I mean, Rob Thompson was our executive producer for 50 episodes, but he started as a director with this particular episode. And we just loved him. He's a wonderful spiritual creature. But what I thought was really amazing, Rob, was the comedic timing. We can get into it more because I have my list. I'm sure you have your list. But when we're in that kitchen and we're up against the pots and pans, it's funny. It's been 35 years. But I remember this episode. I remember the set when we filmed the Garden of Eden.
That was a great set.
The original set, I remember now because you're like, don't you remember the original set? I'm like, I really don't. But I remember the original set with the Garden of Eden scenes. So I want to talk about that. But all the comedic timing, like that moment, and when the pots and pans, when you and I have our first kiss, right? And then we talk about it, and then we're like, okay, bye, and we both run off frame. I mean, there was just this comedic timing. So where do we start with this episode, Rob? Should we start with the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should get into it with Rob, but with the other Rob. But the Garden of Eden was a lot of fun. It's such a great opening, and that first song, I want to just point out that Lindsey Buckingham song. What was it called? I wrote it down.
Was that in the Garden of Eden?
Oh, well, it starts before DW Suite, actually. It's actually plays when we cut to the town. I guess
Yeah.
it's after the credits. I don't remember the song, The Garden of Eden.
And as we talked about in the Amazon Prime, when I was working with them and everything, they really retained a lot of the great music, unlike what they did in the DVD series. But in the Amazon Prime, they have a lot of the same great music. But I have memories. I know everybody listening wants to hear more about the filming of the show, and I'm like, well, God, it was 35 years ago. But I remember filming that with you, Rob, and to Rob Morrow and to Rob Thompson's credit, because they kind of oversee the editing. It's Josh Brand and everybody as well. But some of these funny little moments were left in. And I remember filming the Garden of Eden. It was late at night. It is my recollection. It was really late. And you and I were slap happy when we finally got to the Garden of Eden. And those little laughs that I did, like, oh, you're like, oh, yeah. Or whatever it might be with the apple, like, that was so much fun. I remember that moment and how fun it was. And I don't remember if we filmed it first or last, but in this episode are O'Connell and Fleischman's first kisses. But that Garden of Eden scene was brilliant. Just the temptation and the sexual temptations and whatnot. And that you and I had our first kiss, like, oh, you're naked. Oh, so am I. Oh, it was a lot of fun. Don't you think, the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, and I also love the way they just kind of boldly cold open the show with it. So you kind of, like, even I forgot about that opening, and so when it came on, I was like, wait, where are they? What are they doing? And it does allow us, these sequences allow us to express other parts of the characters. And for instance, the scene in the igloo where you play an Eskimo, I mean, you're almost unrecognizable. I mean, you're beautiful, but you're like, whatever you're doing in terms of playing that character, there's no Janine, there's no Maggie. It's like someone else, and it's fascinating. But I think we always love those opportunities, and this episode was chock full of dreams and fantasies, and it allows them. I'm going to also talk about Rob about the aesthetics. It allowed every department to kind of be more creative than normal, which is already, a high bar.
Well, that's one of the things I loved about the show when we opened each script was the fun that we had. And, Rob, I believe you and I were spoiled for any project we did after this, because you can't if you think about a CSI or some of those kind of shows, it's always the same thing.
I know. I did one.
Yeah, I know. And I did other series, which were always the same thing. And you look at this, and you're like, oh my gosh, in this episode, I was in the Garden of Eden. I was in your dream sequence, to be a thief, you have to think like one. I was in the igloo with this long hair forever. I had on red Adidas shoes. Catherine did a great job with the costumes and the fur.
What do you love about this episode?
Well, I love this kind of thing. The fact
but I mean,
that
the story. I mean, not just like what is it? Why is the story so impactful? It's such an interesting.
Well, before I get to the story, I'll just finish that in the igloo, it was so fun to learn other languages. I had to learn the other languages. And as I'm watching it 35 years ago, I'm like, oh, I was pretty good at that, And I'll never forget Sikami glue. I've always remembered Sikami glue, which means ice. You want some ice? Sikami glue. And the fact, and we'll have to talk to Rob, that I chopped the ice off the igloo itself and then plopped it in your paper 7-Eleven type of cup. I mean, I just think things like that were brilliant directions, brilliant writing. But the fact that Darren and I had to learn a whole nother language, it was the challenge of the show was so fun. And Rob, your reactions in all these fantasy sequences, your subtleties of your reactions are so funny. And when Ed walks in, if you just had the fantasy and you dropped the phone and all that, I thought you were absolutely brilliant. And to answer your question, what overarching of the show, I think it talks about.
No, I'm asking you what you loved about what is this in the story itself? What is it that speaks to you?
I think in the story itself, it's the overarching element of humanity, which we always talk about, and the sexual attraction and how people keep it hidden and they hide it. And yet nature does things to us that we are human. I love John Corbett's line about we used to live in the wild and have to worry about being attacked by the lion. And now we just go to the zoo where we don't have to worry about being attacked. And I think we have forgotten about the overarching humanity. And in our society today, we don't forgive anybody for humanity. It's like in the olden days, we used to forgive for humanity. And now there's like, oh, you can't possibly be human. You have to be perfect. So those are my thoughts, Rob. What are yours?
Well, what I think, what you were touching on is really the heart of it for me, is that how nature still impacts us in this modern world, and how nature unifies us too, because we're all one when it comes to nature. We all are reactive to it. And I find it fascinating that the whole town, once again, there's such collective ideas, going through the show, that a town experiences these natural phenomenons and it informs their psyches, in different ways. It's not just sexual. Holly has a violent thing, and Chris has Chris Stevens becomes a thief. It just kind of, it opens up other parts of us. And that to me is what really is distinct about this episode, and really fascinates me.
I agree with you there. And then Cynthia Gary Shelley wants to read a book. Right.
Yeah, the opposite of her normal, right?
And I love Ed's character trying to figure out the one of my favorite lines is it's always been one of my favorite lines. He says, "That's it. He goes, but you say, is there any pattern?" Because he's trying to. He goes, well, it's a random pattern. That's the pattern.
Right.
I mean, it's a random pattern. That's the pattern. And you ask about the overarching elements of the show, and perhaps that's it. I mean, life is a random pattern. And I do a lot of history. I love historical documentaries or, futuristic documentaries, things of that nature, archaeological documentaries. But they talk about the summer solstice and how important that was, and the winter solstice, and the things that kind of affected people's energies. And this, the breaking of the ice did. And you're right, it brought out a little bit of something different in everybody.
How about we bring out young Rob and hear his thoughts?
Let's bring Rob Thompson. Okay, so let me do a little intro. I've already kind of mentioned it, but Rob Thompson, we adored him. We literally adored him. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Rob Thompson. And I'm going to go to what I just wrote about Rob. He's living in New Mexico now. He was living in New Mexico then. He had a ranch then. I bought my ranch after Rob had his. And he was a writer and a director. He's now written 2 historical fiction novels about the American West in 1861. But he started as a writer, and then he became a director. And then I want to hear Rob, when we talk to Rob, one of my questions for him is, because I know we first met Rob Thompson as a director, and what a superb director he was. And he must have gone then to the studios in LA, because we were in Seattle, and worked with all of them. And then somewhere in that, he was asked to be an executive producer. Lucky for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is Rob Thompson from New Mexico.
Thank you very much.
Howdy, Rob.
Hi there, Kim.
Thompson.
Hello. And hi,
it's so
Rob.
good to see you. Hey, Rob. You look great. I have to say, whatever you're doing, however you're living, you're doing something right, because you look healthy and lucid and strong, and I know you're keeping busy, and so it's nice to see your face.
I'm happy to hear you call me lucid. That's my favorite. I'm red as a lobster. I'm normally not this red, but I'm not embarrassed. But it's just so fantastic to be with you guys. And I truly mean that. I haven't seen you guys for so long, and you were such a part of my life when all of this stuff was going on. I still use, Janine, you said that thing about random pattern. That sticks out to me. I've used that in conversation several times, and it always confuses people, and it's supposed to confuse people. Overall, just a tremendous experience. And if you want to talk about this specific episode, I will, because I thought it was a brilliant script, It
was a great script. How did you come to the show? Was it just a straight offer? Did you lobby for it, or?
No, as a matter of fact, I turned the show down. Was happily living in New Mexico with my wife, Rebecca, and we're living in a very remote place right now, but we were remote in Abiquiu as well. We didn't even have television, to be honest with you. we would read and start a fire and listen to music in the evenings. And I would get calls from agents or producers asking if I wanted to direct the show. And I would generally tell a white lie and say, yeah, I hear it's a really good show. No, I know it's a good show, and so forth, and let me think about it. And then I would call my agent, at that point it was Elliot Webb, and say, please send me a copy of this because I haven't watched the show. And that was the situation with Northern Exposure. When the first call was made, I didn't know anything about the show, to be honest with you. And I said no. And then somebody persevered, and I'm happy that they did, because they sent me one of the shows, and I liked it. But also my parents, I grew up in Seattle, and my parents were still up there. So I thought, well, this is fortuitous, and yeah, I'll go up there and shoot this show. It also had some relevance for me because as a young man, I spent a lot of time in Alaska. I was a commercial fisherman up there.
Man, you've had quite the life, huh?
Well, so I did know a little bit about it, basically. And I obviously knew about Seattle. I hadn't been away from there that long. So the whole thing kind of conspired. And then I got this script, and the script was just so good. It had like 4 or 5 solid storylines. They were all vivid. It was like the show was being, well, it was being invented for me because I hadn't been a part of the earlier things. But there was like a sense of rebirth, and that's also the theme, sort of the show, in a way. Basically, it's spring and all that sort of stuff. I just love the script.
When you get a script, do you immediately start seeing images and ideas for aesthetic ideas and stuff like that, or does it take a couple read-throughs to get ideas?
I think a couple read-throughs. You just get a feel for the thing initially, and that was so solid because it had a wonderful framework with repressed libido and spring, and then it had 4 or 5 really solid storylines. The storyline with you two was just fantastic. It was so much fun to shoot. But then also, Barry Corbin had a great storyline with Officer Szymanski.
Oh, yes. God bless her, because she's passed.
And she has. And this was the introduction of her. This was the first time we saw Barbara Szymanski, played by Diane Delano.
Yeah, and she was fantastic. And Darren had a great piece, basically. And John had a great piece. And you guys had a great piece. And Barry had a great piece. All within this great framework. And then, of course, John Cullum, he got to paste Officer Szymanski in the fight. And that was just, it was just so much fun to shoot.
You make a great point, Janine. Check this out, right? This might be the first episode where the ensemble is in harmony and balance. Right? Because oftentimes one of us takes the lead, our storyline takes it. But this was like everyone kind of had it was a real ensemble effort. And maybe that's what stands out about it, aside from the story idea.
I agree with that. I think that we talk a lot on the show, Rob, about federalism and community and being the wild, wild West and the American experience of kind of being self-governed. And the fact that they didn't even have a police officer, and, Fleischman from New York's like, what do you mean there's no police officer? I love this. And Rob, you and I love this because we live out in the middle of nowhere, right? Just this kind of lost sense of individualism and freedom that they didn't even have a police officer is really a lot of fun. And Rob, my question for you is the comedic timing. You directed us so beautifully, even at the end when we're kind of having that orgasmic sort of intellectual conversation at the end, and then we smoked the cigarette. But my favorite, the comedic timing that you had with everything. I remember like it was yesterday filming the episode in the kitchen.
Yeah.
When Rob, I don't know what we filmed first. I don't know if it was the Garden of Eden, because we're never in order.
Yeah, I think we did the Garden of Eden first, yeah.
Did we? Okay,
yeah, right.
So that was Fleischman O'Connell's first kiss. and then we did the kitchen, and the choreography of this attraction, and how we had to bang. Remember that?
Yeah,
Rob?
right. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
How we had to bang into all the pots and pans, and the comedic timing. And then you had us like,
And then you guys just split.
Okay.
You split.
Yeah, that
right.
was funny, Rob. That was really Rob Thompson. It was really funny.
What I remember though is, Gene, about that, it took a while to get it. They didn't necessarily know. They said we're banging around, but it wasn't really written down what we're doing.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I remember you coming to us and saying, it's got to be wilder. It's got to be, out of control. It can't, and I think what we ended up doing, Janine, because it was probably late, that's what I'm getting. I don't remember, but we're always behind the gun on a TV show. And I remember we did that take, and it may have been the only time we did it because we destroyed the set. Yeah. And what I did was I grabbed you, Janine, and I held on and kind of flung you around, and you just kind of went with it. And we just I just flung you around the kitchen, and we knocked over as much as we could. And it may have been the only take that we got that exact kind of choreography, as you say.
Oh, yeah. I remember it very, very well. And you guys were great. And yeah, we did dial it up. I mean, we accelerated it, and you guys wound up bouncing against the wall. And I think you're right, Rob. I don't think we had another take in us, basically, because everything was just totally chaotic. And then you guys split. You also had a line in there, which I love. Oh, so you have the Jell-O regulation book, huh?
I love that. I wrote that down, too.
Oh, you have it, huh?
It's a great line. But yeah. Janine, what's funny about that? Like, we had a lot of great sexy kisses on the show, but this to me was not it's not the way it plays is great, but I remember it was not, we just smacked our lips together and held on for dear life. It wasn't like sensual or anything, right?
Yeah, I would say the Garden of Eden was a little more sensual, but
absolutely.
Later became, But that was the animalistic part of it, probably, to get the theme of the show. Rob Thompson, what are you trying to say, Rob?
I was going to say there was another scene between you guys, which was sublimated sex. Remember, you come over to Janine's house, and you wind up smoking a cigarette at the end. And they had you guys just fire down on the couch just at the very end, just as though it's postcoital, and you go through this whole thing. So that was another wonderful scene, I thought, too.
Yeah, and as I'm watching it this time, I'm looking at our dirty socks. You know what I mean? We're both sitting there in Alaska with his dirty boots and on my dirty socks, and we're smoking that cigarette. But yeah, I remember that scene too. We had to build up to that moment.
And it was just a climax. It was a literary climax, right? It wasn't like there was no, yeah.
No, absolutely. You guys played it brilliantly. Can I tell you one little story about the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, yes. Please.
Okay, this stuff happens in productions. So we got this wonderful set, and we rehearse it, and you guys are great. And you reference a snake, remember? So I said to the snake handler, bring the snake out. So there's a little bit of a pause, and the snake handler goes off set and comes back with this hugely lethargic snake, basically. And the snake's not doing anything. And we had to have it up on a branch, basically, and the snake kept falling off. And I said, what's with this snake? The snake is like half dead. And he said, well, we took it out of the refrigerator too late. And then I learned that they will refrigerate snakes before they bring them on the set. And they just sort of forgot about the snake. And so we might as well have had a ceramic snake.
I wondered if that was a real snake. Here I am in all these shows I've done. I've had to touch a snake. I've had dead bats and cliffhanger all over me, flying bats flying around. But I thought how brave I was to touch that snake, because I touched the snake.
Yeah, the snake was comatose. It just didn't move. So those are the kind of behind-the-scenes production stuff. But you guys just adjust to it, and it all works out. And that's kind of the miracle and fun of doing these things.
Rob, I want to ask you about the aesthetics, because the show is particularly timed dark. I don't know if I'll be curious to see the next episode, but was that because of the kind of deprivation of light in Alaska? Do you remember making that choice, or was it just the overall?
I didn't make that choice at all. Yeah. Who knows what it might have been about? It might have been final timing too,
But you see how dark it is. I mean, it's and lovely. It's very It's very chiaroscuro, very cinematic. There's times where you can't even barely see people's features.
Well, it's been so long ago that I don't remember those kind of discussions. That's the kind of lighting that I prefer, where you're not afraid, even though you're doing comedy, of what I would call a black reference at some point in the frame. I mean, Storaro and all of those people do this thing. And so I don't think comedy should be like lit up on, on all edges, basically in all corners. I think
I
it's
so
corny.
agree.
And it comes hat in hand with canned laughter and all that stuff. So I think we did have kind of a mildly painterly look for that show and for other shows.
Hey, Janine, we should track next episode whether it can, because I know the Jimmy Hayman and the filmmakers are always wanting the show to be darker, but as they used to say to me, is we shoot it like this, and then the guys in the broadcast booth, when they just flip the buttons all to the brightest possible thing. But I think at a certain point, Josh and John were able to kind of appeal to the network and say, look, let's try to make this show a little different than the average sitcom.
Well, the only thing is, I did catch that, Rob, where I had to turn the light up on my phone because I watched it again this morning. I'm like, I can't see anybody, so I took the light up on my phone. But so that may have something. Except I think that the scenes with Diane Delano and Barry Corbin were very bright.
They're lit.
I think that, yeah. And I've always remembered, so it might have been a cinematic thing we can talk about that with Jim Hayman. But I've always remembered that he ironed her underwear, her clothes and her uniform, and those scenes. God bless Diane Delano, because I used to exchange Christmas cards with her for 20, 30 years, and just recently she just passed, and she was so funny. And wasn't she funny, Rob's?
Oh my God,
she was very funny. Yeah.
She was a godsend, and she took direction and really had fun with it. But yeah, those scenes, for whatever reason, were a little more lit up. It was Maurice's lair, but I also don't want to forget, Rob, another dream sequence that you did, which I love. That was at Robert Palmer.
Yes, we forgot. We haven't talked about that yet. That was
I get people asking me about to this day. People ask me about. They love that sequence.
Rob, were you singing? Were you singing in that?
Well, there's one moment where I'm singing probably underneath it, but they didn't use my vocals until the end when the sound of the audio music drops out, and then you hear me singing. So that's my voice.
Okay,
yeah.
Good voice. That's a good voice.
Well,
so
thank you.
Yeah. But Rob, that y'all had a lot of fun with that. I wasn't there on the set, but I remember it was a lot of fun.
I'll tell you, I had fun.
Those girls are fun. What's that? What, Rob?
I was surrounded by 10 beautiful girls. I mean, it was like, it was like, oh boy, I got to go to work today.
And Rob, I had to get them all to wiggle simultaneously because they're not necessarily professional dancers. And it took some rehearsal to get all of those curves going in combination.
I remember that. And you had a choreographer there.
Yeah,
I remember that, but I don't know. But she may not. But you're right. They were models or something. They weren't dancers.
Yes, yeah. At the end,
so did you have to get permission from whoever the singer was?
Robert Palmer.
To emulate Robert Palmer. Did you have to get permission to actually literally kind of copy that exactly?
They had to license the song, and then they had to get the I'm sure they had to sign off totally,
because
which makes
that
me
was
think
his music video had those girls in it.
And Rob did a great job of recreating it almost. I mean, it'd be interesting to watch them next to each other. I have never done that, but it makes me think that Robert Palmer might have been a fan of the show, because I don't know why he would let us do that.
Yeah, and speaking of that piece of music, I'll go back and the intro music. We Can All Go Crazy Together. I thought it was sensitive and perfectly in sync with what we were doing. And I think we used it starting the show and ending the show. So it provided just a terrific frame, for this thing.
I agree. That's Lindsey Buckingham, and it's so evocative. It just kind of there's something about great music that hits you in the guts, and that one just instantly hits you and takes you on into something, another dimension or whatever.
Especially at the end when everybody's running naked through the town.
I was going to say it worked at the beginning, but it was really pungent at the end. There was something about sort of dropping out the real sound, and seeing the ladies egg you guys on, and doing that soundtrack was terrific.
Well, that we should talk about that last scene, and we can go back to the middle of the show. But that last scene, I know you have some memories of it. Now, let's hear yours.
Well, I love that. That wasn't, we didn't shoot sequentially. So I think we did 8-day shoots. So I think that was probably around day 6. And we'd rounded into good form, I think, as a production company by then. And we're obviously shooting in Roslyn, and it was very discreetly shot, actually. You guys, I think, were in flesh-colored jock straps or something, right?
No, there's another part to this.
You guys run naked?
Well, what happened was, I'll let you get back to yours, but what happened was, I, being the whatever young idealistic, truth seeker, it was written that we're naked. And then when we came time to shoot it, they were like, "You're in your underwear." And I said, "Oh, come on, this is 1991, and we're, let's do it."
Right. Yeah.
And I got Matt Nodella to give me a wad of cash, and I went through the extra holding area, and I said, and we come up with some number like $30 on top of whatever they were making for anyone who would run naked with me, because I wanted to run naked.
Great, Rob. Yeah.
And so we did it, and so we did a take where we were naked. Most of the takes we did with our underwear on, but then we did one take, the last one, and that was the one where the mayor of the town happened to have been coming out with some people that were looking to do some business in the town, and walked out on his porch and spotted. They already hated us in the town at that point. They weren't happy that we were there. We always came over and took over and told them what they could do. The mayor comes out, he sees us, and as you're gonna, I don't remember this, but you tell this part, and then I'll come back to my end of it. So the mayor comes out, and what happens?
Yeah, I didn't see the mayor, and I was just very satisfied with the shooting of the scene, and Jim Charleston called for lunch. And so I'm about to head off, and I see a policeman approach me. And it's really like out of Mayberry RFD. It's like Barney Fife, and he's got his hands on a pair of handcuffs, basically. And he comes up to me, and he said something like, "Are you the guy that and I said, "The director?" And he said, "Yeah, are you the director of this thing?" And I said, "Yeah, I was proud of it." And he said, "Well, you're under arrest." I said, "What for?" And he said, "Running naked in the streets. And if you're the guy, then you're going to jail." And I told you guys prior to the show, it was such a stupid thing. I just should have said, "I'm your man. Do the crime, do the time, take me right now," basically, because it would have been so lovely to be tossed in the clink in Roslyn, and then have the production company come back and say, "Where the F is our director? What's
Well, so what happened?
But what did you say?
So here's what I said. I thought about it, and I said, I may be the director, but I said, I'm a small fish. I'm just a cog in this large wheel. The guys you really want are in Hollywood and in New York. I said, those are the guys that made me do this scene. And so the guy's staring at me. I know he wants to make an arrest. He's got to arrest somebody. And I kept yakking on about this deal about these guys, they make you do these scenes and so on and so forth. Finally defeated, he just turned around and left, and I went and had lunch.
But what happened was they didn't give up, because then someone told them that I'm the guy that paid off everyone. So basically, I'm the one responsible. So they want to arrest me, and they had to they put me in the little movie theater there, and they had Teamsters guarding me because they thought they were going to come arrest me. They had to call down to L.A., get business affairs on the phone, and make some kind of settlement or something saying we'd never do it. And mind you, for all of this trouble, is the one that you never see our butts for real on the finished cut.
Well, yeah, we had those berms that were on wheels. Remember the snow berms? So
that's right.
Kind of discreetly cut, on a couple of those things, basically.
But it doesn't take away from the triumphant aspect of it. I just watched it an hour ago, and that last image of us running through and the women cheering, and I think I'm the last body and my arms are up like this. There's just something so triumphant about it that you did a great job.
It's back to that human nature. And it goes back to the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, we were naked, right?
Right.
we were naked until we took the bite of the apple, and
I'll just tell people
naked.
who don't know that she's saying the word naked.
I know. Everyone always makes fun of me. I'm from Texas. How am I supposed
No,
to?
it's cute. Naked. It's cute. Let's hear you say naked. Just say naked, just to say it.
Okay, naked. Okay.
There you go.
So we're naked in the Garden of Eden, and then you're naked at the end. So it's back to that whole primal aspect of what we're like before we became so self-conscious. And I think that maybe has a little bit of an impact on the show, where people go to not be judged and not to have to be self-conscious all the time about whether they're doing things right or wrong. And the behind-the-scenes filming of it is fascinating. I remember, but Rob Thompson, you had the snow piled up really high. So you should talk about how you brought the snow in to kind of cover. And then I don't recall ever seeing anybody naked. So I think you called us in later, or we to get our reactions, and they just ran through with their underwear on. Because I think when you actually did that moment of everyone naked, nobody else was around, right? Because I don't remember that at all.
I don't remember, but I love what you're saying, though. I mean, that it makes me think about how the town always has these rituals that they share in, which is very, it's beautiful, and you don't see it a lot, where these rituals, these annual rites that happen, that acknowledge time passing, and this annual running of the bulls, which Joel experiences for the first time, is very powerful.
Well, there's obviously a sense of community, and we don't have that a lot in this country, and that's why shows like Northern Exposure and even Mayberry RFD, they're just a lot of people long for that. But also, I think the best of the Northern Exposure shows always had an underlying theme to them, and the themes were always different, basically. And then they would fill in the blanks with the various storylines, but there would generally be some overriding theme that was significant. I don't remember. I'm thinking of the trebuchet thing. I can't remember what that was.
The trebuchet, he's talking about a great episode where the flinging of the piano episode, which I guess was the next
Burning
year.
Down the House.
Burning down the house.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to direct both of those. And Burning Down the House, we actually had to burn a house down. In
I know.
The trebuchet show, we had to build a trebuchet, which is a phenomenal thing. I want to mention Woody Crocker's name, because he was just a genius pulling this stuff together,
Absolutely. And his whole team were always champions. But I like what you just said, Janine, about the materialism, is not that important ultimately, which was the theme of that. But I'm curious, Rob, do you remember how the tone meetings went? Was the theme articulated to you, or did you just kind of intuit what the theme of the episode was?
Rob, you've directed, and Janine may well have too. You try to kind of stay alert in the tone meetings.
Right.
You know what I mean? I have a concept of how I want to shoot it, basically. And this is the writer's last shot at you, basically. Right. You want to do a lot of hand-holding, and God bless them. So you kind of pretend like you're really paying attention, you know what I mean? And I would scribble little notes in the side, and then I would kind of ignore them once we got there. I mean, you want to do the spirit of the thing, basically, and you don't want to not do what they want. But yeah, tone meetings, basically, if you think you get the show, you just kind of... you just go through the motions, basically.
I have a behind-the-scenes question, two of them for you, Rob Thompson. One is, when you were doing those tonal meetings, you were probably in Seattle once you became executive producer, so that's my first question. Were you in Seattle for those when you did the tone meetings?
Yeah,
I think fly to LA.
No, I think a lot of those were on the phone, because the writers are obviously in Los Angeles, and I'm not going to fly down there for tone meetings, basically.
I remember them. I used to walk in on them. They'd be in that corner office there, and there'd be a speakerphone.
Was I awake?
And you were awake, of course, and whoever the key people were in the room with you, and they'd be talking about their ideas and stuff. But I do remember them.
Well, this was, but you went back to LA probably as the director for this episode before you were executive producer to edit it, correct?
No,
So,
no,
yeah.
all the editing was done in Los Angeles, and because
And you went there, you were there for the
well,
editing.
I guess I was for that show because I was a hired gun. I was not a producer on that, and I couldn't have done it later on as a producer because you're prepping another show, and you're doing three things at once essentially. I think I did go down on that one
Because the music was phenomenal. I mean, there's opera music when Ed Burrows comes in and catches Chris in the morning that he was the thief, and it's opera. I mean, and then much during the fight, the sequence of that was like jazz.
Yeah,
I think that was original score by David Schwartz. I have a feeling. I have a feeling.
Fight?
Yeah, it just seemed original to me. Yeah.
You're bringing up Chris's dialogue about the stolen radios. Do you want to hear an anecdote about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. These things always work out this way. It's Friday. We're in Roslyn. You always wind up shooting late because you've gone over on Tuesday and a little bit on Wednesday. So you got to shoot your day out on Friday. And it's always like you're shooting at 11 or 12 or something like this. And that was the case when we were there. And it was also crummy weather. It was quite cold. And I hadn't directed before with this show. So I didn't have the kind of communication that I got later on with all of you wonderful actors. But John Corbett, who I just loved, had this piece of business, wildness. He goes through it. He couldn't get it for some reason.
Wait, what was his business? What do you have to do?
Wildness, Ed. This was after Ed Shigliak had exposed him as the thief, basically.
Oh, right.
And so he's got like a third of a page to deliver about why he did it and why it's not a bad thing, why it was actually a good thing. And John, bless his heart, I don't know if he was tired, but he just couldn't get that speech. He got the introduction to it, but he couldn't do the speech, and that was seminal. And unless he completes this, we're not going to get out of Roslyn, and we got to go over the pass back to Seattle, and it's snowing. And so, you don't do this with actors, obviously, but John would say, "What do I say?" And I'm not an actor, but I would say the words. And so we try it, and it failed. And he tried it another time, and he failed. And now everybody's looking at me, side eyes, basically. They just want to get the hell out of there. And I asked the assistant director, this is not in the directing handbook, basically. John and I were in the back room. And if you remember, it was dark and it was full of rubbish, and there may have been rodents back there and so on and so forth. John and I are disconsolate with our backs against the wall. And I asked the director to go out and get some bourbon.
Yeah, baby. I love it.
Give me a shot of bourbon. And
there you go.
I said, get me a miniature or get me a pint, but bring it in here. Don't let anybody see this. Just give it to me. So John and I are sitting against the wall, basically. I like bourbon, and I take a pop and I say, John, you want to try it? He says, yeah, I'll take a pop. So we're standing back there in the dark, and we got like semi-lubricated, and I say the words, and John says, I got it, Rob. I got it. So he goes in there, absolutely perfect. Cut. Let's go back to Seattle. Everybody's happy. So you don't find that in the director's hand.
But isn't that what's so genius about it, and why you're so good a director? Obviously, people get drinking, is not the way to get performances all the time. But in this case, it wasn't that. It doesn't sound like you guys were chugging. It sounds like he needed something to break his pattern of not being able to retain the lines, and you found something to just ease the tension, which is that to me is the key. He was blocked.
Yeah.
He just loosened up.
He was blocked. He released it. That's a brilliant story.
It's a great story.
It just it loosened him a little bit,
Yeah.
Rob, as a director, you're just a pragmatist too. I mean, I'll just not do anything to get a good scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also what I think that speaks to, Rob Thompson, is understanding the actor with whom you're working. right?
Absolutely.
It's like,
Yeah.
how does this actor tick? Rob and I have had a lot of discussions about how I always looked at a script from an emotional standpoint. What are my choices emotionally before I did anything else? It's like, how does the actor tick? How can I get through to them? And that is a brilliant story about directing. I absolutely love that story. And also, I just want to tell a little anecdote here. Jim Charleston, we've got to get Jim on
Yeah.
because Jim was our first assistant director forever. He was, and you know what? Assistant directors can make or break the energy on a set because they're the ones who go rolling, quiet on the set, action, and if they're like these manic, obsessive, loud people, it makes you nervous. They're going, and action! And you're like, oh my God, okay, I've got to go act now. But, and Rob Thompson always had a low-key demeanor. He was always funny. He was sort of friendly. You felt a relationship to him. But I remember so many of these late nights, Rob Thompson and Rob Morrow. And one of Jim Charleston's, our first assistant director's lines he would always say is, you got to get this. The pass is closing.
I forgot.
How many times did you hear at the end of a scene, good job, now get out?
So let me just explain to the audience that we lived and shot mostly on sound stages right outside of Seattle in Redmond. But 2 days out of every episode, we would go over the Snoqualmie Pass, about an hour and a half southeast into the Cascades, which was where the town of Roslyn was, which was our town of Sicily. So when it snowed, you couldn't get over. You'd have to put chains on to get over that pass. So
sometimes they closed the pass.
Absolutely. But I just want to point out.
Funny. If I can add, Rob,
yeah, you're right.
He was being funny. It's like the pass really wasn't closing. I mean, maybe occasionally it did, but it's like the pass is closing. In other words, no one's going to get home.
Yeah, it became like a bumper sticker or a T-shirt for Jim.
It's a good point. But I want to point out that in light of your story about Corbett, one of his lines that I love, which might even close one of the last lines in the show, is Chris Stevens says, "Sometimes you got to do something bad to know you're alive."
That's good, huh?
It's a great line.
It really is. I mean, you guys, I'm sure you've been talking about it. It all comes down to the script, basically. And there was brilliant writers on Northern Exposure. We would just get, I mean, you guys know it. You'd get the scripts and you'd say, holy cow, look at this. This is fantastic. And we also got them in a timely manner. We got them with plenty of time to prep, which was Josh made this happen. Because on lots of shows that you guys have worked on, and certainly I've worked on, you don't get it till the last moment, and you're going to compromise doing that. Josh had these wonderful scripts come down the pipeline on time.
You're right. That kept us all the way through the whole series, the whole 5 years. We always had scripts on time. We were never running, at the last second.
And they were so much fun to get and so much fun to read. It's like, do I get to speak Russian in this episode, or, the Native American Eskimo in this episode, or, whatever it might be doing. But the scripts were just simply terrific. And I have a question about the editing process because you directed that episode and then you were there to watch the editing. And also, Rob Morrow, I don't remember a lot of looping in this particular episode. That looping went on for 6 hours or whatever, redirecting, rewriting, but I don't remember a lot in this particular episode. How much power did you have, Rob Thompson, in the editing process? Because I thought the editing was really, really great as well. The timing of the comedy and whatnot.
Well, it's so many years ago that it's really hard to recall it. You're right. I did go down to Los Angeles because I was a hired gun at that point. And I did oversee the editing. At the end of it, Josh gets a hold of it and he does what he wants to do. They had good editors as well. So, but I'm a broken record. The script was just so good that you could not hit. It was impossible not to hit a home run with that script.
If it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. Well, but I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, Rob Thompson, because it can be on the page. But someone has to understand, like the story you talk about, John Corbett, you've got to bring it out in the actors and then the comedic timing and then make it all work. And it was just, and you were a joy it was a joy to work with you because we felt you were one of us. Some directors will come in and be very sort of controlling or whatnot. And it was just I have so many stories with you, Rob Thompson, you'll have to come back.
And the The way it works, though, just for the audience, is the director, even when they're a producer, they'll shoot the show. The editor will do an assembly of it. Then the director gets a cut. They always get a kind of pass. It's mandated by the DGA. It's like 4 days they get to do a cut. But ultimately, after that, the executive producers get it and they do whatever they want. Sometimes changing it drastically, sometimes accepting what they got.
I have a fun story to build on what you're saying, Rob, which is in the days of film before, high def and digital, the film was very expensive and you had to cut the film in between so you didn't waste film if there was directing or someone had to pick up a line or what it may be. And now today with HD, you can just, with digital, you can let it run forever. But you would say take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, take 5. A lot of times we did like 8 takes. I think Rob Thompson once told me that I always got going around the 3rd or 4th take. So I was like from the 3rd or 4th take. But then after the director saw what he wanted, he would say, wasn't it print that take? It was like, that was the favorite take. Mark that take, print that take, because not all the takes were printed. And Rob Morrow, I remember you and I would also step in and say, okay, Rob Thompson might have liked to mark take 4, but I really loved take 5. Do you remember that, Rob? And then we would watch the dailies. I mean, that was, I think it's an interesting behind the scenes aspect that doesn't really exist anymore.
I think we would ask for certain takes to be printed. But again, ultimately we had no say what was, and I never knew what ended up.
But that was our say. That was our say on the set. We were able to say, please print this. Do you remember that, Rob Morrow?
I do. But I'm saying is it didn't mean anything once it went down south, they did whatever they wanted.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true.
So Rob, how did the producing, how did that come about that they asked you to come on as a producer?
Well, so I think Josh really liked that show. And this is a true story. So my agent had a good relationship with Josh, and I came up with an idea for a show. And he said, I want to get you together with Josh Brand, and you guys could become partners. So I said, well, great. I like Josh. I like doing Spring Break. So we got a meeting, and I came in. It was just Josh and I thought I was really articulate. I thought I laid out, I thought I did a really good job. It took me like 10 minutes to explain the whole thing. Josh was paying attention. And at the end, he seemed to be paying attention. And then I said, so what do you think, Josh? And he said, I don't want to do it. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, I don't want to do it. But he said, but I'm doing 3 shows right now. I'm doing Northern Exposure, which up in Seattle. I'm doing I'll Fly Away in Georgia. And I'm doing Going to Extremes in Jamaica. You can produce any of the 3. Which one you want to do, basically.
Wow, what a compliment.
What do you want to do? And I said, let me think about it. So I went home, thought about it, talked to my agent. And I thought, well, I really enjoyed the experience on Spring Break. My parents are still up in Seattle. Yeah, I'll do that show. So that's how it happened. But also, I'd never produced before. So I asked the salient question to Josh. I said, well, what do I do? And he said, you just keep doing what you did on Spring Break, basically. Because he said, that's basically where we want to be.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Josh is such an intuitive kind of guy that way. But I just want to point out that he probably knew before he took that meeting with you, he had a different agenda.
Oh, he had a different agenda. And then I also said at the end of it, I said, well, I'll go up there and do this, but how will I know if I'm doing a good job? And he said, oh, you'll hear from me. I didn't hear from him that whole first season. I kept waiting for the call, and that was a great season.
And it was so great because you came in, I think maybe that, not insecurity, but that sense of not exactly knowing what your thing was made you so open. You didn't come in and throw your authority around as a producer. You kind of just presented as someone where the buck stopped, but that where you were an ally to all departments.
One of us. You were one of us.
Well, that's a tremendous compliment. And I felt that way, basically. I felt we were all sort of inventing ourselves, basically, at that point. And we were fortunate that we're not doing it in Los Angeles. It would have been a different animal if we'd have been down there. We had some leeway. We had a longer leash shooting up in Seattle. And I think that was a part of why this thing was it was a small part of why Northern Exposure was so successful. We weren't shooting at the studios basically, and so we didn't have those people looking over our shoulders, you know.
Yeah. And Janine, I want to ask you a little about that igloo scene. What was it that you were doing I'm fascinated with how different you were, yet it was just, were you wearing contacts, like brown contacts or something?
No, I wasn't wearing brown contacts. I think it was just the nature of the lighting. I think because the more light in my eyes, the more you would see the green. But the light was very shaded in there. And I harken back to, I always worked with my acting coach, Marsha Hoffrecht, who had been a member of the Actors Studio during the days of Paul Newman and Dustin Hoffman and Marilyn Monroe, you know. And when I got a script, I looked at all of it and I made specific choices. So my choices in that script were very specific to the tone of what was happening with that particular character. So I must have made, some sort of choice that it wasn't Joel Fleischman. You know, it was like she was somebody, and it wasn't Maggie O'Connell. She was somebody completely different. So I must have called upon a different era of my life, a very specific choice, because everything I did was sort of a sensory choice. And I got very specific about with whom am I speaking? Where am I in this igloo? What is the smell? Am I cold? Am I comfortable in the situation? So everything was sort of sensual.
Yeah, it was great. I just loved it. Hey, Rob, so we need to kind of start winding down. Is there anything else that you thought of that we should hear from you?
Oh, I don't know. You know, if we had two more hours, I could gas on with behind the scenes stuff, because that's the fun stuff. Basically.
Well, go ahead. Give us one or two before.
I think I've shot my wad on this show.
Okay.
I'm just a broken record, because I just thought everything came together just brilliantly on that. I will tell you this too. After I became a producer on that show, and I think we were like halfway through that season, you know, our Emmy season, and Jeff Skansky, who was running the network, came up and said, "Let's have lunch, Rob." So we had lunch, but we had lunch on the set. And he said, you guys just keep doing what you're doing. So far as I'm concerned, I don't get the show at all. I always conceived it and still conceive it as medical Jeopardy in the Outback. You know, some guy with his guts hanging out coming off a gurney. But he said, So I don't really get the show, but you guys just keep doing what you're doing, because it's going well, you know. So
that's great.
Meetings too. And then, all the execs too, they would always come up and they would always wear a plaid shirt. Remember, like the guys from Universal or the network, they would have a brand new, relatively expensive plaid shirt. So, right?
Right. Yeah, like a Gucci plaid shirt.
Yeah, a Gucci plaid shirt.
Yeah.
And they'd have their lattes, on the side of the set. And then the next thing I know, they're flying back to LA. So I thought, we must be doing something good.
That's a great point, because the show was doing well despite the networks not understanding what it was. And also, to their credit, I like Jeff Sagansky. He's a good guy and has good taste, and was smart enough to see something working and not get in the way. Because a lot of times people's egos will force them to kind of get involved and try to shape it even and end up hurting it. But they didn't. Maybe
the last thing I'll say too is every show needs somebody like Josh, who will protect the show. Who will go to the mat and tell the network, get out of our body bag. I know in one or two instances, I think Josh said, if so-and-so goes, I'm going. And so in order to make anything really successful, there's got to be somebody who's the blocking back who will do these things. And that was Josh, basically.
That's a really interesting statement. I will just step in there and talk about the fact, I'm really glad to hear you say that, because when someone like Josh takes a stand and becomes sort of difficult, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I believe. This is the genius of the show. And if you don't like it, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And now in this day and age, you're like, he's difficult or she's difficult. And I find myself getting really wrapped up sometimes and like, I need to be a pleasant little actress or whatever I am. And I shouldn't raise any. And yet it's that kind of, and Rob, all the Robs, both of you and I, we were very passionate about what we did. And sometimes that means you have to take a stand. And now we're in this politically correct kind of environment where it's even harder to do. You know what I mean? But it's refreshing to hear that you're sure that the Leonardo da Vinci's or the Michelangelos or the Puccini's or, the Mozarts of the world, they have their vision and that's that great line from Amadeus, the movie, where the king comes up and everybody's in the king's ears and they're saying, tell him that it wasn't any good. And yet the king really kind of liked it. And so Mozart goes up and says, what did you think? And the king says, oh, I don't know. It's just like, too many notes.
Too many notes.
Yeah, yeah right? And Amadeus looks at him sort of like Rob Morrow you would do, or I would do, or Rob Thompson you would do, or Josh would do. And he looked right at the king and he said, oh, which notes? You know what I mean? Like, tell me which notes. Yeah, and so that's kind of...
Josh protected us, basically. And you have to have Josh on something like that. Yeah.
That's a great point. All right. Well, on that note, I think we'll wind it up and say, Rob, hey, so great to see you and so glad to see you doing well and just have so many great memories of working with you. And as we go through these shows, I'm sure we're going to ask you to come back and share some more insights. So keep watching them. So you'll be
yes,
you'll be reminded.
Please come back, Rob Thompson. It's such a joy to see you.
This has been a total pleasure, guys. So yeah, I'm here for you.
All right.
And I just want to say, Rob Moore, really quickly, you went through those highlight years with us. Those seasons of like the third and fourth seasons with all the Emmys, the Golden Globes. We were on like cloud 9, top of the mountain during those episodes.
You're right. So that's a good point.
We have those were kind of the apex of I think what we did. So please come back because.
So if you love Northern Exposure, you're looking at a guy here with the silver hair. That's a big reason why you liked it.
Yeah, and we loved you. I have a lot of stories, and you do too. So please, I hope you come back. And so thank you everybody for joining us today. Next week's going to be another awesome show, just like this one. Please spread the word about this as well. You can watch the show on Amazon Prime Video. And as Rob said, you can listen to this anywhere. You can watch us on YouTube, things of that nature. And so we're signing off today from O'Connell and Fleischman.
No, I think it's actually Fleischman O'Connell.
In your dreams, Fleischman.
Northern Disclosure is a production with Evergreen Podcasts and executive produced by Paul Anderson and Scott McCarthy for Workhouse Media.